Good morning, everybody. Michael Sapienza here. I'm the CEO of the Colorectal Cancer Alliance. We really appreciate everybody being with us today. We also have David Fenstermacher, who is the head of our research and medical affairs at the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, and then Dr. John Marshall, who is the director of the Otto Rush Center for the Cure of Gastrointestinal Cancers at Lombardi Comprehensive Cancer Center. And we're here today to talk about the Project Cure CRC RFP. So I'm going to give a little bit of a high-level update on the RFP, and we'll turn it to John to go into a little bit more detail about what transpired in December around our what we call Cure CRC Summit, where we brought together 120 of the world's smartest minds in colorectal cancer, and to talk a little bit about the top kind of targets that we're looking at and strategies that we're looking at for the RFP. I'll talk a little bit more about the process, and then we'll go into a Q&A. So again, we're super excited to be opening this request for proposals, which, as you probably saw, opened on March 1st. We will be funding tens of millions of dollars of research. We're incredibly excited to be doing so. The Alliance, the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, is just honored to have all of you here today, and we'll be going through a little bit of the punchlines. But before I do, John, maybe I'll turn it over to you just to get your thoughts on the process that we went through in December and kind of some of the categories in which we're looking for proposals.
Michael, thank you very much, and thanks for everybody who's joined in with us this morning, wherever you are. So. Yeah, we're really excited about this, and this is an opportunity to really change the entire dialogue around research in general, and the rate at which we succeed, and a high risk, high reward kind of emphasis. And the opportunity to be part of this is really special. What we did on very short notice is called together a bunch of folks from around the world, actually, to join us for a 2-day crash course in, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to cure colon cancer? How are we going to not only reduce the number of people that are getting it, but those people who do get it, how do we ensure that a higher proportion of people are cured of their disease? And we did a lot of sort of high-level thinking about what was needed, where the areas of emphasis should be. We arm wrestled over tables and over meals and over whiteboards to try and bring forward those high-level topics and areas of focus that could have the most impact in curative approaches. And so it's you might imagine is everything from the sense of screening and early detection, but also when's the last time we did anything innovative in the adjuvant setting, right? How do we improve that? How do we optimize the number of patients with oligometastatic disease who can be cured through surgical techniques and follow-on therapies? How do we get more therapies to the colon cancer space quicker? How do we understand the biology, the new targets that are out there? How do we incorporate our new technologies where we are leading, such as ctDNA? How do we change the discussion around immunotherapy in microsatellite stable colon cancer? And honestly, how do we change the rules about how clinical research is done? How do we break through some of those really onerous, unhelpful barriers that are out there in clinical research? How do we stimulate public-private collaborations? How do we break down some of the barriers that exist in our siloed data and incentivize connecting those dots? Because we're all pretty sure there are important answers hiding in those zeros and ones on our computers and siloed databases around the country and around the world. So we came forward with some high-level areas of focus, which are listed in the RFP, are written out there. And Michael, I didn't know if you wanted me to kind of go through some of those itemized and review that with team, but how would you like me to go next?
Yeah. I think Dr. Marshall, let's just talk a little bit about the high level pieces. So Obviously, we have new strategies and technologies in immunotherapy and cellular therapy beyond MSI high. You talked about that. The circulating DNA and how we can improve patient outcomes through that. You talked about the clinical trial piece. Maybe talk a little bit about vaccines, that piece, and the next couple of ones on the list. I think would be good.
Yeah, we need to understand how to utilize our immune systems better. We make some assumptions about metastatic disease that may not be true in the adjuvant setting. I started my career in vaccine-based therapy before the checkpoint inhibitors came along. And so there's clearly a lot of good work in that, which would have an immediate impact in, increasing the percentage of people who are cured after a definitive surgery in that setting. So high level there. We know that AI is we hope that AI is going to uncover all those things that our human brains can't see in our data sets. And we know there are many people focused in that, but we want to incentivize everyone to come look at that in the colon cancer space. So if you have a database or if you are an AI expert, we want you to start playing in this colon cancer sandbox, so to speak. We talk about our pathways in colon cancer are not as dominant. They don't drive tumors the way, say, it does in breast cancer or lung cancers. And we are learning more how to control some of these pathways, BRAF, HER2, RAS, the whole MAP kinase, MEK pathway. We're learning more about that. But there are other pathways out there. So we need to find new targets and new drugs to hit those targets. Along with that, if we can identify cell surface proteins that are unique to colon cancer, those kinds of therapies are relatively easy to develop, where you have monoclonals that are tagged with chemotherapy, for example. I mentioned oligometastatic disease before, and then I've always, as many of you know, been jealous of the success of our breast cancer colleagues. But one of the things they did, a doctor named Laura Esserman led, was the I-SPY 2 infrastructure that got built to where new therapies could be put into treatment much more quickly, with answers coming much more quickly in that kind of infrastructure. So we don't have to be exactly an I-SPY, but we need to look at the opportunities that are there to drive clinical research for our patients around the country and around the world through novel infrastructure thoughts.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, Dr. Marshall, I was just going to say, there's a couple examples of this. Yes, the I-SPY 2, but there's also Precision Promise with the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. There's also Kathy Giusti's group, Multiple Myeloma, Michael J. Fox in Parkinson's disease. And it is something that I think we feel really strongly about at the Alliance, and which is creating the largest data set of patient information that we possibly can. And this will be part of the RFP. So meaning if you have a strong idea at an academic center, or you're a small biotech or a group that is looking at any sort of type of data sets, we will give preferential treatment for those that have and are willing to work together and combine that data. David, I'd love for you just to briefly talk, if you're able to, a little bit about what we're just right now calling a precision path. We're going to rename it, of course, when we figure that out, which is creating the largest data set and being a clearinghouse for patients and their families, making sure that whether it is biomarker data or minimal residual disease data or patient-reported outcomes, et cetera. David, can you just touch on that briefly on some of the experience you've had there?
Oh, yeah, sure. Thanks, Michael. So, really it's about creating a data set that is going to be most likely a federated data set, such that we would be able to take advantage of institutions such as health information exchanges to be able to aggregate data from across multiple healthcare systems. As all of you know, most cancer patients do not go to just one healthcare provider, they go to many. So making sure that you have as much of a complete data set as possible as far as the clinical pathology data and other data associated with the patient through those resources. But then as more and more patients are being molecularly tested for their tumors, whether they're MSS high, whether they have particular mutations in various genes such as BRAF, this data also becomes important to understand the molecular characteristics of their tumor. And so being able to link to that data. And so working with the diagnostic companies, as well as some of the biotech companies, and how would we be able to access that data in a de-identified way to be able to use for research, but also be able to use for clinical utility. As such, just as an example, how could we use a data set like this to really propel telemedicine such that second opinions could be done remotely rather than people having to travel possibly to a major cancer center to get a second opinion. So, there's lots of things we can do with data sets like this. We also, are going to hopefully be able to entice some of the pharmaceutical companies to share some of the clinical data from clinical trials on specific patients that we have in our data set, again, to enhance the data as much as possible so that we truly understand the molecular underpinnings of their cancer and can develop the best therapies.
Great, David. That's really helpful. So I'm going to move on just now to a piece just around what are we looking for. So, these words are thrown around a lot: high risk, high reward, but we really mean it. So, meaning like if there are existing things in shelf ready that we kind of already know that may not be of curative intent / are going to move from stage 4 to NED, then we probably won't fund them. But if it is curative intent, if it is, making sure that metastatic patients move to NED, if it is around tumor microenvironment, it is around, cold to hot, we definitely would be very interested in those. In addition, public-private partnerships. So let's say you have a project around tumor microenvironment, and it's a single institution grant for whatever the amount is. We are going to prioritize a partnership with maybe even the most brilliant idea, or come back to you and say, hey, we want this public partnership because we feel like it's going to be a better return on investment for patients and their families. Team science collaboration is going to be a really important piece. And the only other things, I know you can read the RFP, so I'm not going to go into this in a bunch of detail, but Young Investigator Awards, you see those, you see the Senior Academic Funding Awards, you see that, yes, there is the venture philanthropy for-profit entities, and some major emphasis, again, on these partnerships. So before I move on to like the timeline and process, John, anything else you would add just around what we're looking for? Any words from not a layperson like me that will help give some people a different additional color?
Yeah, no, I think what's different about this in some ways is that, let's say you already have some science or some investment, or you're a company out there that is thinking about going into colon cancer and has some investment but needs some matching funds. So when we talk about these partnerships, we want to bring additional resources to the table. We want to draw additional resources. So if your proposal has, well, we'll put in this if you put in that kind of thing, that's also what we're looking for here. We're seeking things that will have the biggest impact. We understand that incremental basic science is incredibly important. We can only see what we see because of the people that came before us. But we also are looking for things that will have an immediate impact quickly in the next year, 2, 3 on our patients around us. So we are in a hurry, we are impatient, but we're willing to invest in things that could pay off at that level.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So just in terms of a little bit of the logistics, so the RFP launched on March 1st, as everybody knows. It will be on an ongoing basis, basically. So and as you can see in the RFP, you see that based on which award you're applying for, you either have 1-pager or up to 2 pages for that first part of the application. We will be reviewing them basically on a monthly basis, and then coming back to the teams and saying, okay, if you pass the first muster, going to an actual full proposal. We ask that you get those back to us with as fast as you can, and we probably will again be reviewing those on an ongoing basis as well. David, anything else you want to touch on just before we turn it over to Q&A on the process?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing we're asking for, we call it a letter of intent. That is just the way the software is set up in Proposal Central. Really what we're looking for is what we describe in the RFP. What is your idea? How is it going to impact CRC? What is the cost? What is the timeline? And provide that information in the space you have in the best way. It's not to provide a very formal letter that some other types of granting agencies are looking for. This is really the way for you to communicate your idea to the reviewers so that we can understand, is this a good project or not? Again, we will be doing this on a rolling process, so we are hoping to get an answer back to everyone regarding the letter of intent within a month. And then again, like Michael said, we want your full proposals back as quickly as possible, and we will review them and expedite them as quickly as possible. So we're trying to make things fairly fluid, at the same time not setting deadlines that everyone has to adhere to, as we understand there are other priorities that are also in your wheelhouses. So yeah, just if you have any questions about any of the processes we're going forward, and I'm still learning Proposal Central, and I will make mistakes probably, feel free to communicate with me. My email address is on the RFP, and I'm happy to help you with anything you need with regard to your submission. So,
John, before we go to Q&A, is there anything else that you want to say before we open it up to questions? And please, as John is saying anything, please put any questions that you have in the Q&A, and we'll get to them as they're received.
It's a different kind of process from what a lot of people think about in terms of grant funding. We are collaboratively investing this money to accelerate the cures for colorectal cancer. We also know there's science here, there is business here, but we want those two things to come together in the name of saving lives, improving the outcome of colon cancer patients. We are on the cusp of a lot of discoveries, and if you're like me, you feel somewhat frustrated about either the lack of investment or the lack of significant progress in patients in this setting. We know this isn't billions of dollars. We know what it costs to develop even a single drug. But when we look at the potential impact of an investment such as this, combined with the brains and the already existing investment, we see this as a true accelerator, sort of transformative process. So, we as reviewers and as the people who are going to be trying to prioritize how this is spent, convince us, sell us on what it is. What will be the impact on the number of patients you think will be helped by this? What is the real timeline? Yep, teach us the science that we need to learn. Share with us your thoughts about how to move this forward. But try to, bring together a team that's going to be more attractive to us, higher probability of success if the right people are at the table. So don't just take that thing that got a decent score on your last renewal but didn't get funded and polish it off for us unless you think it really meets the spirit of what we're after here. We're looking for new approaches, new ideas.
So we have a couple questions here. Many of us senior investigators work as team scientists. How would you suggest a senior scientist choose between the two options? And I'm assuming you mean the two options of the Senior Investigator Awards and the team science. David or John, any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So I look at it as if your project really is, say, co-PI, so you're going to have different projects within the overall proposal that would be led by different PIs, then I'd really think you'd want to go for more of a team science award, because that's really about bringing different ideas and different expertise together to solve kind of a single problem. Of course, the problem would be broken up into various pieces. If it's really more about you're going to have a single PI and you're going to be, collaborating with other PIs around your institution or even another, then I'd more go for a senior investigator award and then just have key personnel as part of that or collaborators as part of that. So I think it really depends on the overall scope of the project, which direction you'd want to go.
And I think
Right.
the idea of, there are teams within your institutions, people you're used to working with, and there are teams external to that. And I think in many ways, what we are looking for is connections, connecting dots so that things are not done just within one institution. There's more value to this if there's more than one institution or more than one group working on it. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Okay, so the next question is, would you potentially be trying to get public and private groups who each applied for a grant to collaborate, as in two groups that have never worked together before? I think yes and no, both, right? I mean, I think it could be new collaborations or existing collaborations. John and David, correct?
Yeah, I agree with that. And if we would see something that we think might be a marriage, we might suggest it, that kind of thing. But yeah.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I couldn't agree with that more. And in fact, that's part of what we're going to be trying to do behind the scenes a little bit, is connecting thematically these things. But obviously with rolling reviews, something might come through in the spring and then a different thing might come through in the fall. We might be able to figure out how to manage that. So we will do this as collaboratively as we can. And as transparently as is appropriate, right? Because different people have different ideas. They have their own intellectual property. That they will be concerned about privacy, but at the same time, if we see an opportunity to catalyze, we want to do that.
Yeah, the next question is about, can a single entity apply for more than one grant? I think the answer is yes. I don't think there's any qualification there. Absolutely. If you do have questions on which may be more strategic, et cetera, I'm sure you can reach out to David. Okay, the next one is for the opportunistic award, the small startup companies, which LOI version should be submitted? Early career team or strategic? Is it up to 1 page or versus 2 page? I think it's up to 2 pages if I remember David correct.
Hold on.
All right, why don't you look at that and I'll go to the next question. Can a young investor tenure track associate professor submit 2 applications? Let's say 1 early career investigator award and also pilot. John?
I would say anybody can submit anything they want, right? Now, what we then have to decide is, and it's a group and a process that we have in place, but, pick your spots, right? You have to imagine that we are going to receive many of these. So if you really feel like you've got 2 different ideas that you think are worthy of this, then go for it. It's your call.
Yeah, agreed.
An answer to the previous question is it's a 1-page description. So it's under category 1 of the application's letter of intent in the RFP.
It sounds like you as an organization may also play a role in building teams after the LOIs are in. So if we put in a senior investigator proposal, we may get paired to a team in different institutions. John, David?
There's no requirement that you accept any of the recommendations that we give you or feedback or steps. So we're not forcing pairings, we're suggesting them, but those pairings might increase your chances of funding, for example. I mean, we're not trying to put we want it to be efficient, but more importantly, we want it to be effective. And so if in introducing 2 groups together and saying, is there any opportunity that you will be better together, then that's a decision that needs to be made collaboratively.
Yep, that's great. Would you support radio? I don't know how to pronounce that word. John, can you guys see that in there?
Radioligand.
Thank you. Radioligand. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
There you go. That's an easy one. For existing clinical trials that meet the mission of changing the trajectory of CRC patients, does the Alliance prefer keeping a clinical project separate from concurrent preclinical work, like in mice, or submit a larger project?
I think, again, this is back to, we're not trying to have you read our minds here. What will have an impact on patients the soonest? If there has to be some preclinical work as part of a project, we get that. But, though, again, is that incremental science, is that transformative leaps? So we're hoping for more of those transformative leaps, if that makes sense.
Yes,
It may not be responsive, but
sure. So can you speak more to the requirements of a potential interoperable data platform? Maybe, David, you can reach out to this person privately, to Hillary Fiscum, and have an offline conversation. Or Hillary, if you want to email David, that might be probably the quickest way to answer that. The next question is, do we need to include preliminary data?
we're going to want to see justification for the science, yes. Okay.
Would you support a biotech outside the U.S. collaborating with U.S. University Hospital?
Yes.
Yes. I'm interested in early career or early investigator grant. In terms of that, taking data from patient samples or making data sets can be an aim in the application, ? Or utilizing data sets would be preferable for this grant application?
You
can collect data. That's fine.
Okay.
Well, you could argue that data is going to be critical, right? So, one of the things that the Alliance is also doing is building out an app for patient entry. There are a lot of us sitting on, we here at Georgetown MedStar just abstracted 1,000 patients with colorectal cancer's data. So there's a little silo. We're going to be collecting, not under the grant, but we'll leverage that obviously too. So data collection will be important to the overall onward success. We're not we would love it if our work's done in a few years, but we know our work won't be all the way done in a few years. So data collection will be important.
Great. The opportunistic award focuses on curative science. Does that mean that it would not fund the ctDNA liquid biopsy priority? I think the answer to that is no.
Yeah, no.
We feel like it does, right?
Yep, absolutely.
John, thoughts on that one?
Agreed.
Okay. Can early science investigators submit a ESI award proposal that pursues a new and transformative research track, but different from his or her previous works? Absolutely.
Yes.
Sure.
If within the same institution, multiple investigators with different expertise, molecular targeting and immunotherapy, try to collaborate to build a platform to expedite multiple investigator-initiated clinical trials in CRC, should we apply as a team award?
Let me maybe help the discussion by saying we have rough outlines of what we think these categories are: a team award, a senior award, this kind of thing. So, you would do your best guess and put it in under that. There are also some funding recommendations, amounts with those. So you would try to find the best place for this, but we're not going to ding somebody if it's a great award and you had the wrong header on the application process, if that makes sense.
David, anything else you would say around that? I agree, and I also think that, right, we are looking, we try to put guardrails around it, but they're not like, they're
not hard and fast. If we see something that kind of bridges two of them, that's not a problem. We'll just, again, this is going to be a discussion, not something that we dictate. So, anything that we are going to propose, we would propose to you and have work out how we can best serve the patient population.
That's great. There's another question here about in preclinical drug development project appropriate for team science award? Yes, absolutely. Right, John?
Yes.
Does there need to be a clinical aim?
I mean, yeah, we want to see how what you're going to do is going to impact patients in the near future.
Great. Would you support studies on predictive assays or biomarkers for response to therapies? Absolutely.
Yes.
I want to go back to that last question and maybe give some other thoughts, because as we were putting together the RFP and the different categories, part of what we see here is an opportunity for younger or even senior investigators to take an idea that needs, that next step to really take that leap that maybe traditional grant funders wouldn't accept. And by doing so, if we can give a year or two of funding through this mechanism and make you then more competitive for a traditional R01, U01, et cetera, that's a win for us. That is a good use of this funding as a way to get you to, because that then draws more money into the overall focus around colon cancer. So I believe that's part of our intent, is to draw more people into this field and get them additional funding from other sources.
Great. For strategic awards, what should we list? Who should we list as the institution? One of the trial sites, the institution that one of the academic co-funders is at, biotech company, or multiple institutions?
Normally you're going to have a lead site, so wherever the main PI is out of, and if you are partnering with the biotech company, that would also be good to make sure you tell us who that is and what the compound is. But again, we're not trying to dictate how you submit. It's really how you think you best can communicate your idea and how you can basically achieve the goals of your idea within the proposal.
So it looks like we have one more question. We have about 5 minutes left. So if you do have any other specific question, please add your questions now. Would you consider target therapy that provides survival benefit for metastatic cancer, but unlikely a cure? I think yes is the answer. Absolutely. I know we say curative intent, but I think we probably would all come up with different answers on what curative intent would be.
I think what we don't want is drugs that, improve survival by, 2 months. We don't want, we're looking for a response rate as a primary endpoint in novel therapies. Stable disease matters, don't get me wrong, but we want tumors to get smaller, go away. So if I could, that will be shinier to us as reviewers, tumors that are shrinking versus those that are just stable.
And again, if you have questions, reach out to the email on the, is the Alliance interested in cancer disparities? Absolutely. Should we submit compound structures and applications? How confidential is the review process?
I wouldn't submit them in the letter of intent. The review process is totally, what am I trying to say? It's totally confidential. So you do not have to worry. All of the reviewers basically, sign non-disclosure agreements because of the reviewing they're doing. Again, I do not think, if I were you, I'd put the chemical compound in the letter of intent, just really describe what it does and why it's important. And if you then are selected for full application, that is when I would then reveal more of what the compound is. But that's up to you based on your IP.
We have a preclinical molecule through safety pharmacology and likely ready for IND enabling work soon. Obviously, we want to push this forward and develop backups, unique multiple targeted MOA. Are we within scope and operation? I'm assuming you work with us as a project team format, in a project team format.
The answer, of course, is yes. But here, I want you to tell me why you think this is a colon cancer drug. I don't want you to think, oh, it's cancer and these guys got money. That's not what we're here for, is that you got to give us a reason why this product is going to work in colon and how you're going to continue to invest in that pathway.
Yeah, why would it work? If it's working somewhere else, great, but why would it work in colon? Yeah. Should we submit compound structures in application?
We did
we did that one already. Thank you, sorry. I think we're good. Any others?
I did see one that we didn't answer. It came up. It was from Flatiron. So if you have questions directly, just please reach out to me.
Yeah, I answered it for you, David.
Oh, okay, thank you.
David, do you want to just briefly share the most recent grant that got funded from Dr. Manning?
Yeah, so Dr. Manning got funded for $500,000. It's a one-year grant. There is some, again, I'm going to be careful what I say here, but there is some evidence of a altered protein on the surface of certain CRC cancers that are driven by BRAF. And they're looking at, can that become a targeted therapy based on immunotherapy, so antibody therapy, or possibly even something like an ADC. So it's really a proof of concept grant. And the proof of concept really is that this altered protein is present on the cell surface, specifically in CRC subtypes of cancer. And so that's what the one-year grant is that was just funded. We'll be investigating.
Yeah, so there's a couple more. So how many grants under each category we've been funded? I can answer that. Obviously there's not unlimited funding, but again, if we don't have a specific number for each, we are looking for things that fit within the criteria, but also we'll be looking at each of the different awards as a filter through those criteria. So there's really not an answer. We don't have $1 billion, as John said, but we're looking for the best and brightest ideas. The recording will be available. We will put it on the Project Cure CRC Colorectal Cancer Alliance website after this is over, so it'll be shared with everybody. Great. Anything else, John? David?
We're excited. We know we have a lot of work ahead of us. We're going to do our best to play a helpful, transparent partnership role here to make this work. This is different. We're going to be setting some new rules. So bear with us on our side, but we're excited by your interest, and we hope we see good answers coming our way.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just end with this. My mom died on Mother's Day in 2009. At that time, colorectal cancer was the second leading cause of cancer-related deaths for both men and women, and it still is today. And I do have to say, as someone who's been in this space for a long time, and not as long as John, of course, but for a long time, this is going to be game-changing, and patients and their families are so incredibly excited to see this happening. So thank you, and really look forward to reading and participating and seeing the advancements in colorectal cancer. Thank you, everybody.